Hi, everybody. Welcome to Completely Arbortrary. I am one of your hosts. My name is Alex Crowson.
And I'm your other host, Casey Clapp.
All right. What's up, Case?
Oh, man, not a lot. Everything seems to be working out, you know?
Yeah.
I feel like I'm over a hump.
Oh, yes. You are completely, fully done. The odyssey of you moving into your new home has come to a close.
Yes. In fact, officially, just on Sunday, they closed. We're done with our last house. So ideally, we'll get our deposit back because I'm still a renter. So
yeah,
ideally, it'll be done.
I think most of us are still renters in this crazy world of ours.
Millennials.
I know.
But yeah, so everything's you know, it's fine. Everything seems to be good.
That's great.
I will say I have been as you may know, we've recently put out a podcast.
Yes.
And I'm having so much fun looking up all these fun things. Like, this has kind of been something that I've always wanted to do in terms of like, I'm just going to research this tree and make a little fact sheet just for fun. Mm-hmm. And now I'm kind of like, now I have to, and I love it. So
yeah, I will
say.
It's a fun little project.
It's a bright spot.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it has given me something to do with my emotional energy.
Yes, idle hands are the devil's hands.
Yes, I was thinking of I was mixing that up with all work and no play. So I was thinking idle hands make Jack a dull boy.
It doesn't flow near as well.
Not at all. Well, I've been having a lot of fun with our podcast in regards to well, I don't know what this says about me, but I listen.
Be honest.
I think last episode or 2 episodes ago, I called us out for time stamping our episode.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
I was like, we're talking about this. We're talking about I think it was Christmas.
It was Christmas, yeah.
And it's going to be like January 20th when people hear this.
Yeah, right.
So it'll be in late January when people hear this. But I do want to, or maybe
February.
Early February. This is our first February episode. Happy February,
Happy
Case.
February, you guys. Yeah, this is going to be a bright. It's like whenever I picture February, I picture just like absolutely brightness because it feels like it's almost spring, but it's still winter.
Oh yeah,
bright and cold.
That in between, I like that a lot. But I've just been loving the responses from the people who like our podcast. It's just blown me away. It's so cool. For
those of you who, we're going to timestamp this one, I'm afraid.
Yeah.
Our podcast came out just last week, and now we're recording this one, ahead.
We're about a month ahead.
Yeah, just in case someone has to call in sick. We got a whole HR department ready for that. But yeah, it's been so great. And honestly, I can't thank everybody who's listening to this enough for all the support.
Yeah, it's nuts.
2 guys randomly talking about trees, and you guys are stoked about it. I thought we were gonna have like 6 followers.
I feel especially lucky because I've done almost nothing to deserve the credibility this is earning me.
That is ridiculous. I would not. Yeah, this is a partnership, Alex.
I didn't say that so that you would compliment me.
All right,
take it back.
I take it back. You're a real asshole. I take that back too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh God. All right. Well, what are we talking about today? This is a tree that you suggested that we talk about.
That's right.
I'm going to let you introduce it.
Okay. So I want to start this with a comment from our Instagram page.
All right.
If you don't follow us on Instagram, go ahead and do that. It might be a lot of fun.
How do you find us?
Well, you go to Instagram.
Instagram.com?
Yeah. A lot of people use the app.
I still put the www in front of everything.
HTTP.
Whoa. I'm no coder, okay? Come on.
Arbortrary pod. That's ARBORTRARY pod on Instagram. And we got a comment on our very first post. This person says, I'm so excited regarding our podcast, which is very cool. Mm-hmm. I love trees, and my husband is now a Ginkgo from the Living Urn Company.
That is so sweet.
I had to look this up, and Living Urn is a company that takes your loved one's ashes and casts them into a urn.
Oh.
That you fill with soil and a seed or a sapling.
A seedling, anything like that. Yeah.
And you plant it in the ground, and this tree grows out of your loved one's ashes, which is just the most beautiful romantic thing I've ever heard in my life.
absolutely is. I've actually thought about this for myself and for other, people in my world if I had that opportunity. But I had always imagined like planting a tree, on or near wherever they're planted, the people. I can't remember, I guess buried might be the term. Because it feels like a continuation of their life,
Totally.
It's like they've become this tree. Every time it flowers, every time it does something, you're reminded of the joy of that person. That's really sweet.
It's beautiful. Yeah, it's beautiful both environmentally and metaphorically and all those things.
Yeah.
So this person said, "I'd love to hear more about ginkgos. Pretty please," and then a handful of emojis. That just really touched my heart. So I said, "Casey, we got to do an episode on the ginkgo."
Yep.
And then I Googled the ginkgo tree. And my, oh my, I have some thoughts.
I am so happy to hear your thoughts because I'm very familiar with the ginkgo, have been for some time. I was telling you earlier, it's like day 2 on the tree ID list.
That's right, yeah.
It's such a well-known, but it's kind of ironic that it's a well-known. We'll discuss that in a second.
Yeah. Yeah, before we get into my thoughts, before we get into your thoughts, let's talk like we always do first about how to identify this tree in the wild.
Oh my gosh. All right, so... This tree, actually, it's funny that you say that. You may not ever actually be able to find this tree in the wild.
Well, that sucks.
It is. This tree is technically, or not technically, but most scientists are thinking it's actually extinct in the wild.
Right.
But it's so well known and so broadly planted that everyone knows it. No matter where you are in sort of the temperate regions of the world, you're probably going to have a couple ginkgo trees.
Oh, so it's not in the wild, but it's planted maybe like in parks.
Yes, horticultural circles.
I see. I was mixing up. I guess I just didn't understand what was meant by in the wild.
Yes.
I'm not going to be wandering through a forest and find a ginkgo tree
That's
necessarily.
Reasonable. Yeah, you certainly won't unless you're in a very specific valley in China.
Yes.
But if you're walking around, let's say the streets of Portland, Oregon, where there are ginkgos planted like gangbusters.
That's amazing.
It is, and it isn't.
Okay.
There, you'll see them. So here's the thing with ginkgos. They have these gorgeous, I want to say archetypal, but I don't think that's it. But they're this leaf. Their leaves are so well known. Everyone knows them. They're super popular. People get them tattooed on them all the time. And they're these fan-shaped leaves that come out from a single petiole, which is the little stem of the leaf, and it pops out and it splays out like a fan.
Yeah, it's like a really wide slice of pizza.
Yes, with a little notch right in the middle. Sometimes it's deeper, sometimes it's the leaves are long with a deep notch, sometimes they're wide with a really shallow notch.
Oh, I didn't notice the notch.
Yeah, if you look closely, you can see that little notch in the middle, and that is what their scientific name is, Ginkgo biloba. Biloba meaning 2 lobes.
2 lobes.
Exactly.
I see the notch now.
Yeah.
I'm referencing the Sibley Guide to Trees by David Allen Sibley.
Oh my God. For those of you who are, so many people have asked us about hey, do you have any resources? I'm doing this.
Yeah.
I want to know about trees. Number 1 favorite book, especially if you're just getting into it. Man, this book gives you everything you need to know. The guy paints individually all the different trees and fruits and drawings, everything there he's done himself.
It's a beautiful book.
It's amazing, and it's extremely succinct, it's factual, and it gives all the extra information that you could want without cluttering things up. It's just such a well-designed book.
And I'm borrowing it off Casey, so I'm kind of geeking out.
You should. I've done it so many times. You can see that book is destroyed.
Yeah.
I put it in my backpack for
a relic.
Decades at a time.
All right, so it's bilobial?
Yes. Well, what?
What did you call it?
That's the scientific name, Ginkgo biloba.
Biloba.
Yeah, but I like bilobial.
Oh,
I feel like
I was calling the leaves bilobial.
I think that's a great term. I think I don't know if it's gonna be in that book, but let's use it.
Hey, wait a sec.
Hey, your brain is bilobial.
Am I a scientist now?
I think you just became a scientist.
I'm published because we're putting this online.
Yeah, there you go. What I wanted to imagine right then was you having I look away, then I look back, and you look just like the doctor from Back to the Future. Your hair's really wild. You're clearly an eccentric doctor. That's what I imagine.
In the blink of an eye.
The blink of an eye.
Alex's whole world changes.
Okay, so the rest of the way to identify this tree, the bark of the ginkgo is one of the best ways to identify it if you're just walking up, because it's this nice gray, kind of light tan brown. And it has it's kind of broken up into furrows, but the furrows are really shallow. And then as it gets bigger, they get slowly bigger and bigger, but not so deep. They're like, it's not like a Douglas fir where it's like this super rough surface.
Yeah.
And they say stay remarkably similar from when they're really young to when they get really old. And it kind of has like these lines that look like it goes up the bark. But the real thing that you can tell, there's two things that really are just kind of will really throw you off. So the ginkgo's leaves come from these little pegs of shoots. So if you're looking at a ginkgo, it's not going to have like that normal branch pattern where if you're looking at a big tree planted in a park where you see this big full circled kind of canopy, they're really angular. So it grows up and it has branches that come out exactly straight, then have these like sort of 30 to 40 degree angles of all these branches coming out with these little like less than an inch long pegs where these groups of leaves come out every single year. So it's like group of leaves off a peg, and then that peg just stays there producing more leaves every single year.
This is you describing the ginkgo or not the ginkgo?
This is the ginkgo.
Okay,
yes.
okay.
So,
I missed the transition there. Sorry.
Oh gosh, sorry, yeah.
No, it's my fault.
So it's got this, as you look at it, it's like, wow, that is amazingly like, it looks almost like a thin canopy of sticks that are just exactly straight.
Yeah.
But when it's full, it looks like a really airy canopy with these gorgeous little leaves hanging on it. And then during the fall, ginkgos are dioecious, which means they have male flowers on one tree and female flowers on the other tree. Actually, I'm sorry, I should take that back. Not flowers. We're going to get into it. We're going to just say male reproductive parts and female reproductive parts on different trees. So,
isn't that how it always is?
No, many trees that flower would have what's called a perfect flower, and that has the male parts and the female parts inside one flower.
The perfect flower.
The perfect flower. Magnolias are the quintessential archetypal example. In that case, I think I can use.
You nailed it, my man.
Thank you.
Ooh, Casey's happy dance.
Yeah, that was great.
It looks a bit like you're playing drums.
It's because I was like,
it's your natural.
It's my natural move. When Casey's soaked, he just taps his feet really fast. Yeah, I do. But the thing that actually will, so if this is a female ginkgo tree, this is what's going to throw people off, and this is what some people either love the ginkgo for this or they hate it. Most people in the West hate it. People in China love it. This is a cultural thing for the fruit of the ginkgo, which is not technically a fruit. I'm so excited to talk about all these things that I'm like, hinting at. The thing that is the seed, the fruit, this is air quotes right now, of the ginkgo, is this very circular thing. It's almost like a large marble, and it has this seed coating on the outside. That seed coating, when it starts to sort of falls on the ground, starts to decay a little bit, it smells exactly like vomit.
Wow.
I'm not being like, there's no hyperbole here. There's no like, oh, well, okay, I could see it. I mean, you'll be walking and you'll be like, oh my God, did someone throw up right everywhere?
That fucking sucks.
It is the worst. And I've had so many people be like, I need to take my tree down. I'm like, well, it's a nice, beautiful street tree. And they're like, it's a female ginkgo.
It smells like barf.
I mean, it is ruckus.
Wow,
it'll
Casey.
stick with your shoes. You're gonna walk away and you're gonna be like, wow, did someone vomit in my car?
Wow.
Like, no, you just have ginkgo on the bottom of your shoes.
So it's the husk of the seed that rots away, and that's
not quite the husk. It's actually the seed. It's like a thin layer around the seed.
Okay,
so it's
but
like
it's husk-like, maybe.
I would say husk-like. Yeah, that's fine.
For my references, it's husk-like. Okay,
exactly.
We talked about the black walnut last week, and it looks a little to me like the outside of a black walnut, like kind of a leathery. It is.
It's similar, but only at a very superficial level.
I hate the fact that it smells like vomit. This is a big twist, because I came into this whole thing already completely in love with ginkgos. Obviously, I didn't know too much about them because I didn't know they smell like fucking barf.
Yeah, you didn't smell them.
Wow. We got to go smell one.
Well, I smelled one a couple weeks ago, and it was rough.
Where was this? Portland?
Yeah, it was in Portland. It was up in northeast Portland somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a couple that are in the park blocks, like Chapman Square downtown, right next to the old courthouse.
I got to find some ginkgos. I got to smell them.
Well, so here's the thing. So people that don't use these seeds and don't care about them, they think it's terrible. Any Chinese cultural people in Portland or wherever, obviously in China, they actually collect these seeds and they make a soup from it.
Oh.
Yeah, and I've never had the soup. I would love to try it.
Yeah.
But apparently it's not bad, but I think they like boil off the skin so it doesn't have that, I think it's like butyric acid or something like that. It's causing the trouble there.
And it's probably not rotting either. They're using a fresh seed from the ginkgo tree.
Exactly. It's a fresh seed, but it produces this. And the idea is it's supposed to have produced this, started millions of years ago so that some animal who's just scavenging for, rotten whatever, then they would eat that seed and then it would scarify it or as they eat it in their gut. And then they would poop it out in this nice little pile of fertilizer. And then boom, you get a new ginkgo tree.
Lovely. I know that sounded sarcastic, but I was like, oh, that works really well.
It does, yeah. There's a couple other plants. There's like the corpse flower, which is a famous
I know
one.
about this one.
It smells so bad.
Isn't that the flower that in Dennis the Menace?
What?
Didn't Mr. Wilson have a flower that was only going to bloom one night? And then it died. Wasn't that a corpse flower? No. It wasn't a corpse flower.
I don't remember, honestly.
Sorry, because the corpse flower looks like a mattress. It's like a huge fucking.
It's gigantic.
Yeah,
and it has like a very. I think it's called a spathe. I think is the term.
A spathe.
Yes, I could get that wrong. I should look up all my terms before I say it. But we're doing this live.
Yeah, this is what the correction section is for on our website.
The
correction
podcast
section.
Regrets the error.
It's hard to say. The correction section.
Yeah, we're going to have to say it 6 times fast.
Correction. Ready?
Yes.
Correction section. Correction section. Correction section. Correction section. Correction section. Correction section.
You're perfect.
Why'd you bail on me?
Well, because I already messed it up. I didn't want to bring you down. I wanted to jump ship so that you could keep sailing.
That's a real friend. Thanks.
Yeah. You're welcome.
So that's it. Okay. So a male ginkgo tree has different parts than a female tree. There's no perfect flower going on with these ginkgo trees.
Exactly. And so this is what makes the ginkgo so fascinating. The ginkgo is what we call a living fossil. Have you heard the term?
Only very recently in the Sibley Guide to Trees. I read the first sentence of the summary on ginkgo trees.
Oh, there you go. So the reason that it is called a living fossil is because the ginkgo tree was only known from fossil records and from like a couple people be like, wait, where'd you get that leaf? Where'd you get that seed? Before the Western world had made its way to China and really gotten into their flora and started to like really figure out what the flora was of China, which is vastly incredible. And so in China, there's 2 trees that we consider in this sort of strict sense we're talking about living fossils. One is the Don Redwood, which we'll talk about surely on this podcast. Ooh. The other one is the ginkgo, because we had seen the fossils of it all over the place, like in North America, in Europe, all over the world when there was, one world which was Gondwana, like one gigantic landmass. And we dated these fossils back to just in the Permian, which is right before the dinosaurs really appeared in the fossil record.
You're talking ginkgo here?
Yeah, this is the ginkgo.
Has been around since before dinosaurs?
Since before dinosaurs. Or, we're talking like in millions of years. So maybe there was like one, like the precursor to the dinosaurs, but
I think Casey, I think I just had a moment of clarity. I think I just really, this was one of those moments where I really noticed the difference in our intelligences.
Elucidate me.
Because you were talking about these fossils and what era they were from, and I was like, before dinosaurs? No way.
Wow, mister, a bunch.
God, I'm an idiot.
I don't think
that was my takeaway from that entire rant.
Nothing about the tree. You're just like, geez, I need to read more books.
I'm smart in other ways.
Yeah, dang straight you are. Guess who doesn't know how to do a website? Casey.
Guess who knows how to use Squarespace? Alex.
All right. This is tearing us apart. So they found ginkgos. They first found them in the fossil record 260 million years ago.
Incredible.
I just cannot wrap my mind around that. That is millions of years. Not only 1 millions of years, not 2 millions of years.
Yeah.
270. 260, I'm sorry.
Unimaginable, really.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So the ginkgos were probably a species of plant that dinosaurs ate constantly.
That's fucking awesome.
Yeah. And so throughout this, there's been like 3 or 4 different extinction events. So before there was the Permian transitioned into the Triassic period, there's this huge extinction event where like 90% of all life in the oceans died out. 70% of all terrestrial life died out.
Wow.
Then the dinosaurs started to appear. Then there was the gigantic extinction at the end of the Triassic period, which then, or Jurassic, I think, which then, it's the famous one where 65 million years ago, the meteor crashed in the Yucatan Peninsula. Boom, dinosaurs disappeared. And so you're like, wow, this ginkgo has survived at least 2 massive, massive extinction events, probably several small ones. They have survived since the Africa and South America split off and became the 2 continents they are now. They've survived throughout all of that.
I'll tell you why this surprises me.
What?
Because you look at an alligator.
Yeah.
And you're like, this thing has survived for a really long time.
Sure.
It looks like a battered old, you see why it's survived for so long, because it looks like it's made of plate armor.
It does. And it also looks like something that someone imagined for a monster that lived 260 million years ago. Yeah.
My point being, I look at the ginkgo tree, it looks like a precious little baby. How did it survive? I'm sure it evolved over the years.
Yeah, sure.
But it does not look like a tree that I would think has survived for eons.
You're right. You're exactly right. What made the ginkgo so good at surviving that everything else died away? All the other plants that ever existed.
That's incredible
that we don't even know about, or that we do know about. There's plenty that don't exist anymore that we know. We found them in fossil records, but plenty that have just evolved away,
Yeah, it's super cool.
Well, so when you consider this, there's another sort of layer onto this. And the reason, other than the fact that we found these ginkgos in the fossil records, almost the same exact leaf from 250 million years ago as to what we see today growing that we can hold and pick off of a living tree. Those are the seeds, all those weird things that I was just talking about. This is going to throw some people. So you understand the idea of a broadleaf tree versus a conifer, right?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Okay, yeah, perfect. So
hang out with you too much.
Yeah, sorry.
Not too much, just enough.
Just enough. So the biggest difference, botanically speaking, you have gymnosperms and you have angiosperms. These are 2 big main types of plants. The gymnosperms are what's called naked seed. And the angiosperm means covered seed. Means that the ovule is inside of an ovary that is kind of tucked away at the bottom of a plant, and then the pollen has to drill through this tissue to get into that ovary, to get down into that ovule, fertilize it, boom, now you got a new apple or whatever.
So a conifer, which has cones, and inside the cones are the seeds.
Yes.
That would be a angiosperm.
No.
Fuck, gymnosperm.
Yeah, it's a gymnosperm.
I mixed them up, sorry.
I know. It's a little bit of a botanical, well, how does that make sense? They're covered by the cone scales. It's well, yes, but the cone scales, when they open, there's just a seed sitting there. There's not an extra ovary.
Okay.
So when the conifers are getting pollinated, the cone scales open ever so slightly, and then a pollen grain comes in and lands right on the seed, produces a sperm. That sperm goes into the seed, fertilization. It doesn't have to burrow through a new layer of tissue that is the same as, or that would be the case in an angiosperm. Cute. So one is just a naked seed sitting there, open it up, boom, fertilized. The other one, the seed is completely covered and you have to really work to get into it.
I see.
So you would think, as you look at things, you have broadleaf trees, which are your lindens and your oaks and your maples, all with these big broad leaves. Those are angiosperms. whereas the conifers and other gymnosperms look nothing like them most of the time. There's a couple really wacky ones. I'll send some in the notes. I'll show you some other gymnosperms because there's some wackadoodle plants. But the ginkgo is technically a gymnosperm. The seed, that vomity smelling piece of seed, that is just the seed.
Wow, no
it's
kidding.
Just there. There's nothing on the outside. There's a little skin on the outside, like a little layer. That is what smells like vomit.
Little membrane.
Exactly. But that membrane is it, and that's just a part of the seed itself.
Interesting.
The ovules on the female ginkgo trees just kind of pop out there, and they're just sitting there in the open air. They get fertilized. And then they produce these seeds. Boom, you got a new ginkgo that's ready to go. But it's not covered. And that is also speaks to how ancient the ginkgo is, where it is a gymnosperm that has broad leaves. I'm sorry, that throws me. It's so crazy to me. It's you would think that it's an intermediary, but it's not quite. These things all developed sort of independently through different lines. So the angiosperms and the gymnosperms are completely different. They're completely separate. It wasn't like one happened, then the other came from it. They developed separately. And the ginkgos are like this wacky thing that's way off in left field that like, if you look at the botanical taxonomy of it, you have like ginkgos are like their own order. Like it's like plants.
Wow.
Then you have angiosperms and gymnosperms and ginkgos.
And then
over
ginkgos,
here. Yeah. They're the fucking weirdest plants, like botanically speaking. Here's the last factual thing. Most plants nowadays have pollen, and that pollen will then grow, it'll land on a thing, and then the pollen grain itself will grow down into the ovule or into the seed. Ginkgos produce motile sperm.
1 second. My brain has to catch up.
I know. We got to put like a...
I need like pause and like play back the recording for a bit.
I think we should.
Get on the same page. The ginkgo has mobile sperm? Motile, which means it can move.
Exactly. So imagine a male ginkgo tree produces a bunch of pollen. That pollen goes and lands on a female tree's seed or ovule that's just hanging out there open. That pollen then creates this little tadpole, like microscopic tadpole, then has to burrow its way into the ovule, and then it fertilizes that ovule and you get the seed.
That's crazy.
Yes. I think cycads do that, which are another of these wacky old, like ancient plants. Almost no other plants have motile sperm.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So it's like, it's a super ancient thing, and this is scientists have their reasons for thinking why something is primitive. I put it in quotes because primitive kind of means less evolved. When you are sitting here looking at this tree that's growing in a street in Portland that is literally shitting vomit all over the sidewalk, and you're like, wow, you're one of the most ancient trees I've ever even imagined.
This whole ancient tree business, this whole living fossil thing, I think that is like such a beautiful choice for a living urn.
Yeah, right? It really is. I mean, it has so many layers, doesn't it?
Yeah. Casey, I think now is a perfect time to rate this tree.
Okay.
For everybody listening, new and old, we rate trees on a scale of 0 to 10 golden cones of honor. Casey,
yes,
as our resident expert, we will begin with you.
Oh my God. All right. So I'm going to tell you, like, this is my story arc of how I've imagined ginkgos. Like, you see the first ginkgo and you're just like, wow, that's amazing. I've never seen one like that ever before in my life. Like, it's such a fascinating tree. Then you learn all these other things about it and you're like, wow, that's a really cool tree. We should plant more of those. And all of a sudden you're like, oh, look, this whole street has ginkgos planted. That's amazing. This whole street also has... All these streets have ginkgos planted everywhere. They're famous as street trees because they're such tough trees. Obviously, they've survived so many mass extinctions and dinosaurs and all these things. They have outlived all the maladies that would affect them.
I have a very quick question.
Yes.
So sorry to interject during your moment.
I can't believe you.
When planting ginkgos on a street,
Yeah.
do the people who plant them go out of their way to only plant male ginkgos?
They do. So I was infatuated with the ginkgo for a while. I thought it was such a fascinating tree. It is a fascinating tree, objectively speaking. But we plant so many of them right now. I'm just like, no more ginkgos. I am over the ginkgos.
Wow.
So for those of you who don't know, I work for the city, and I'm involved with basically planting. And I have so many opinions on trees. I guess that kind of goes without saying at this point.
Yeah.
There are so many great fucking trees that we can plant on the streets everywhere. Like there's 100 different species, but the cheapest one is the ginkgo or the linden or this other tree. Like there's a bunch of trees that people plant because they're super cheap, they're super available, and they just have been mass produced for decades now. So I have to say, I'm going to give the ginkgo, I think I'm going to go like a 6.5, 6.5. Is that too low?
Oh, no. Casey is asking that because I went, well, my jaw dropped.
It hit the floor. Luckily, there's carpet, so you didn't hear it.
I'm not telling you what your score is about.
All right, that's so. I think it. If this was like a tree that you could find in the forest all over the place, I think I would give it like a 4 because it's like, honestly, it kind of smells bad, and we have a bunch of them, but because they're like this unique species, they're lost to the wild. Like if we didn't take care of it, maybe they would just all die out. Who knows? I don't know. I don't know. I'm going to go, 6.7. You're right.
No.
All right.
Don't let me do that to you.
I'm going to stick with 6.5 then.
Yeah, stick with your heart.
All right, I'm going to do that. However,
I have a hard time hiding my reactions to things.
I don't want you to
famously
never hide anything from me.
People tell me about this.
They're just like, wow, you could have kept that to yourself, Val.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, great job.
I have a hard time with it.
Well, what about you?
6.5, you said?
Yeah.
6.5 golden cones of honor for the ginkgo from Casey Clapp. Yeah. Okay. I think the ginkgo is fantastic. I think aesthetically, it's one of the most beautiful trees I've ever seen.
That's true.
Here's the difference between me and Casey, among many others. I can't remember ever seeing one of these trees in the city. I'm sure I have, but I couldn't recall ever seeing one.
That is stunning. Maybe, I bet you. Yeah,
maybe I need to walk around the city more.
Have you ever had that experience where you would like learn a new word and like, oh, it's an interesting word. Then all of a sudden you hear that word repeated over the next couple weeks.
I'm sure I will see ginkgos constantly.
I think you will. Yeah, I think it's going to happen.
I am not letting Casey's opinion about them being overplanted and overused play into my opinion. Here's what it's like. It's like when your nephew is like 13 years old and he discovers Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon and he's like, this is the greatest album ever. And you're like, yeah, it's good. It's like a little overplayed. It's like classically, quote, one of the greatest albums ever. I'm over that. Listen to this, kid.
You're gonna wrong so many people now.
I am the kid with the Pink Floyd CD.
Okay. All right.
CD. So I am looking at this with fresh eyes.
Okay.
And I'm going to allow myself to do that.
You should.
Why? Because I deserve it. Mm-hmm. I think the ginkgo is fucking great. I think it's beautiful. When I saw a picture of a yellowing ginkgo in the fall time, my heart exploded. It's one of the most gorgeous things I've ever seen. I'm not being exaggerating.
No.
Exaggerant here.
I think exaggerant is the right word.
Yeah.
Now we're going to hear it all the time.
I think the bark is a little nondescript. I think that's fine though. It doesn't need it's the real money in this tree is in the leaves. Yeah. And also when you first mentioned the barf smell, I was a little upset. Right. But then I thought, well, that's actually kind of cool. That's like unique and kind of fun. I think that the fact that the ginkgos are super ancient and like one of the oldest living trees that survived all of these,
adversities,
events is fucking awesome. I'd be kidding myself. I'm gonna go for it.
Just say it.
I'm gonna give this tree 10.
What?
10 cones.
Holy shit!
I was gonna give it a 9.5, and then my mind immediately I tripped a wire, and I was like, no, that feels wrong. I like this tree a lot.
This is what this podcast is about. It's about us being honest, speaking from the heart, making sure we're putting our emotions on our sleeves.
And Casey, I'm amazed that you went so low. I understand it, so I guess I'm not that amazed. I get it, but I'm going to differ with you a little here. I'm going to give this a 10.
I think, honestly, I feel like I was brash. I'm giving it an 8. I'm changing it.
No, come on now.
I'm doing it. I'm giving it an 8.
Why?
I don't think it deserves 10.
Because of what I'm saying?
No, because I think I was judging it off of the last things that I was saying. And I'm like, Casey, you just got done explaining that this is the most fascinating, mind-blowing tree.
Oh.
And then you got upset because it's planted too much.
Yeah.
And that ruined you. I'm going to go with 8. You're right. I'm sorry, everybody.
I feel like I influenced you unfairly.
I feel like we just got so many followers that left and then immediately came back. And they're like, Casey, you've wronged me for the last time. I think that it deserves 10. Honestly, you're right. I'm not changing mine. I'm
okay,
stick
good.
With
oh
8.
my God, you scared me half to death. I thought you were going to go 10.
No, I'm not. I can't go 10.
You in the head.
No, I don't even know if I can go 10. I still every night go to sleep and I'm wondering, like, am I ever going to choose a 10? It's like when kids are like, am I ever going to get married? I'm like, am I ever going to have a 10 out of 10 golden cones of honor? And then it's a restless night for the rest of the night.
Well, now I'm paranoid because I'm like, did I just give this a 10 so that I could feel that rush?
This is your drug of choice.
Casey, let's move on to our completely arbitrary Q&A. Let's hear our Q and who asked us this Q.
All right, here is the Q. The Q is from our listener, Miranda Ernest.
Hi, Miranda.
Okay, so Miranda Ernest asks, I've heard that ginkgo trees can change from male to female. Is this true?
Interesting.
I have news for you. It's true.
Wow.
I was really hoping to rhyme one more time, but I failed.
Ginkgos can change from one sex to the other.
Ginkgos can change from one sex to another.
Tell us how and
not
why.
necessarily entirely. So this is, it's a phenomenon. And this is something that I think is unique. Not necessarily to ginkgo trees. Some other trees can kind of switch their sexes back and forth. But no one really knows why. No one really knows how. Researchers in Japan have been researching. They have found a couple trees, like one entire male tree. It only produces pollen, and then it has one branch, and that one branch has female ovules on it.
Okay.
So they're like, why is that one branch like that? And there's no pattern. It's somewhat random. It's a phenomenon. Like it's not something that generally they can be like, oh yeah, every tree has that one branch. But basically, it does happen. Ginkgos do this. And the only reasons that they can come up with is kind of self-preservation. So the ginkgos have been within this little tiny grove, this small little forested area in China. They're nowhere else. And they've slowly get outcompeted by other trees that grow. So maybe there's this one male tree that's planted that's growing way off, really far away from all the other ginkgo trees. If that male ginkgo tree is just producing pollen all the time, but it's not getting anything, at some point that tree is going to die. It's going to get outcompeted. Something's going to happen. And now you have one less tree. So if that tree over time starts to develop the female parts as well, then it can pollinate that female part, and then you have a self-pollinated tree. That seed will then be able to grow and start a new tree. Genetically, it's not the best thing in the world because just like, inbreeding, you want new genes to always come in. That way you're having a more healthy embryo and things. So if the tree self-pollinates, it can still survive, but it may have weird mutations sometimes and cause different kinds of trouble. And this tree has been, again, in existence almost straight for 260 million years. Wacky shit happens in 260 million years, one assumes. So why it happens, no one's really sure. We have that idea. Does it happen? It does. But not generally, a full tree will just all of a sudden poof, switch genders or switch sexes and then end up being a, fully produce ovules or fully produce pollen. Most of the time, it's just a little bit here and there.
Hey, man, for me, it's all the more reason to you're confirming my 10.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's very fair.
I'm feeling better and better about it.
They're stunning. You're right.
Well, thanks, Miranda.
Yes.
Is that right?
You did. You got it right.
Wow.
Hold on. Let me
It's a fun little game we play. We see if I can remember the name of the person who asked the question by the time Casey finishes answering it.
I know. Depends on how many paragraphs I answered the question in.
Is it really Miranda?
Miranda Ernest.
Cool. Thanks, Miranda. We
you.
appreciate your question and your listenership and all
Always.
of your listenerships. And speaking of, we have come to the end
Oh my gosh.
of this episode of Completely Arbortrary.
Another
Casey,
odyssey.
I've had a grand old time with you, my friend.
Me too. I can't believe this. Like,
That we had a good time?
no, sorry. 10 out of 10. I'm still caught on that.
All right.
I
Yes.
believe we have a good time every time. I come over here to have a good time.
That's right. This is the good time. Thank you so much for listening to Completely Arbortrary. Hey, follow us on Instagram if you so choose. The link to that is in the description of this episode. You can find additional readings on this tree on our website, completelyarbitrary.com. A link to that in our description. And we just thank you a whole lot for listening.
This is so much fun, you guys. Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Completely Arbortrary is produced by Alex Crowson and Casey Clapp. Our production consultant is Olivia Frankie. Our artwork is by Jillian Barthold, and our music is by the Mini Vandals. Thanks for listening.